She didn't say it to my face. She left it in a folder on the desktop. It was named Done, all caps, bold white letters on a gray background, sitting next to our vacation photos and my half-finished resume. I don't know why I clicked it. Maybe because I already knew. Maybe because I felt it. The shift. The quiet way she'd stopped asking if I was hungry. The way she now answered every question with The way she flinched. Yes, flinched, when I touched her shoulder last Thursday. Inside the folder were 5 files. A draft email to a divorce attorney. A Word doc titled Steps to Move On. A screenshot of our joint account balance. A picture of her packed suitcase. And a video. I didn't open the video at first. I stared at it for hours like it was a bomb with a red blinking light. I thought maybe it would explode if I pressed play. Maybe the world would crack open. Maybe it already had, and I was the last one to realize. When I finally watched it, she was sitting on our bed. Not crying. Not sad. She looked relieved. "Clay," she said. And yeah, I know I said I wouldn't use names, but I need you to know how personal this was. By the time you see this, I'll be gone. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because I've already been gone for a while. I just didn't know how to say it out loud. You'll be okay. You always are. She smiled at the end. Smiled. Like this was some kind of closure. Like it was kindness. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just stood up, unplugged the laptop, and left the house in socks. Literally. I forgot shoes. Walked 3 blocks in the October cold until I hit the gas station where we used to buy slushies after midnight. I sat on the curb. Called nobody. You ever realize you've been living in someone else's story? That your entire role was to hold things together while they quietly let go of everything behind your back? She didn't break up with me. She archived me. Filed me under Done, like an expired warranty. But here's the part she didn't plan for. I watched the video to the very end. And at the very end, just as she reached to turn off the camera, I saw it. A man's jacket, hanging from our bathroom door. And that's where the story really starts. I watched that video 4 times before I noticed it. The jacket. It wasn't mine. Not even close. It was this sleek, black thing. Designer. Slim fit. Looked like something you'd see in a magazine ad with a model squinting into the wind. I don't own anything like that. Never did. I wear soft, oversized hoodies that still smell like my old college dorm. My style, if you could call it that, peaked around 2013. At first, I thought maybe it was hers. She always had better taste than me. But then I remembered. She hated coats hanging on doors. Called it lazy. If it doesn't go on a hanger, it goes out. Her words. I heard them enough times. I paused the video. Zoomed in. The label was barely visible, but it was there. Burberry. Burberry. My stomach twisted. We couldn't even afford new tires for her car, but someone was walking around our bathroom like they owned it in a $1,000 coat. I sat on the edge of the bed and let that image burn into my brain. Not just the coat, the placement of it. On the inside of our bathroom door, behind her, right where I hang my towel every morning. Right next to the mirror she used for her skincare routine. The one I cleaned every week because she hated water spots. I couldn't stop picturing him. Standing there. In our bathroom. Maybe brushing his teeth with one of my toothbrushes because I always kept extras under the sink. Maybe using the towel with my initials embroidered on it. A dumb anniversary gift she once pretended to love. Maybe even laughing with her at me. There was no anger yet. No screaming or rage. Just this deep, marrow-level ache. Like I was becoming transparent. Like the walls of my life were see-through and I was the last one to notice. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I did something worse. I went back. The house was dark. Porch light off. No car in the driveway. I had left my keys on the kitchen counter when I walked out earlier, so I went around the back like a stranger breaking into his own life. Sliding glass door. Unlocked. The silence inside was unbearable. Everything smelled like her lavender oil diffuser. A fake calm. I didn't turn on the lights. I just stood there in the living room, staring into the hallway that led to our bedroom. My feet moved before I told them to. And there it was. Still hanging on the door. That same coat. That same expensive fabric, catching the moonlight through the blinds. I reached out and touched it like it might vanish. It was still warm. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From clarity. Because right then, in that second, I realized something that hit harder than any affair or betrayal. She didn't care if I saw it. She wanted me to. The folder on the desktop. The video. The coat. The silence. It wasn't sloppy. It was scripted. She had written my exit, and she was daring me to follow the cues. But I wasn't going to play my part. Not anymore. So I took the coat off the hook, folded it carefully, and placed it on our bed like a gift. Then I grabbed my phone, took a picture of it lying there in the center of our sheets, and sent it to her with one word. Nice. Read at 11:47 p.m. No reply. And still, she had no idea what was coming next. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset. That part had passed. What came after the ache was far worse. Focus. That terrifying stillness when your brain stops asking why and starts whispering, look closer. I laid on the couch, arms behind my head, eyes wide open. The jacket sat on the bed in the other room like a guest no one invited. I kept expecting her to text back, call, anything, but nothing came. And I knew why. Because she didn't expect me to come back. Not like this. Not quiet. Not watching. Around 4:30 a.m., I got up and walked into the bedroom. The coat was still there, folded neatly on the comforter. I sat beside it and stared like it was some kind of puzzle box. That's when I noticed the inside pocket was slightly unzipped. Now, let me be clear. I wasn't looking for evidence. I wasn't trying to catch her in some dramatic way. I didn't want confrontation. I just wanted to know the truth. The kind of truth that doesn't come with shouting, just with confirmation. Inside the pocket was a folded receipt. Not even crumpled. Perfectly flat, like someone had tucked it there intentionally. Neiman Marcus. Men's outerwear. $1,495. 00. Paid in full. And the buyer's name? Vivian Holbrook. Not her real last name. Not mine either. I'd never heard it before. At first I thought maybe she used an alias. But the address listed on the billing info wasn't ours. It wasn't even in our city. It was 2 counties over. Somewhere in Fairview Heights, a rich suburb with gated communities and fake lakes that shimmer in real estate photos. I stared at that receipt for 10 minutes straight. Not because of what it said, but because of what it didn't say. There was no trace of me in any of it. It was like she had stepped into another life, another identity, and I had never been invited. I looked up the address online. Zillow pulled it up instantly. A $940,000 townhouse with white pillars and a spiral staircase. 3 bedrooms. 2.5 baths. You know what caught my eye? The backyard. There was a photo, wide angle, showing a little stone garden path and a patio set. And sitting at the center was a fire pit with 2 chairs on either side. One red, one gray. We used to have those exact chairs. I got chills. Not because I was jealous. Not because I was hurt. But because I realized she had copied our life. Piece by piece. Only this time, she'd rearranged the parts and replaced me. And the worst part? She hadn't even tried to hide it. The receipt, the jacket, the folder on the desktop, they weren't mistakes. They were breadcrumbs. She wanted me to follow them. Not to win her back, not to plead. No, that part was over. What she wanted was darker. She wanted a reaction, a breakdown, a collapse. But that wasn't what she was going to get. I folded the receipt, slid it into my wallet like a souvenir from a trip I never meant to take, and stood up. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I logged into our shared bank account. And what I found there, that's when the real betrayal began. There's something sick about watching your own bank account and realizing you're just a passenger in someone else's spending spree. It's like reading a horror novel, but every charge is a knife, and your name is on the billing statement. The login screen felt familiar, almost comforting. For years, I had been the one checking our finances, budgeting every grocery list, splitting every bill, tracking every dime. Not because I'm cheap, because she said it made her anxious. Said money stressed her out. Said I was better at numbers. I used to be proud of that. I used to think it made me useful. But now, staring at the digital trail of betrayal, I felt like an idiot. A meticulously organized idiot. The charges started small: boutique candles, organic food deliveries, subscriptions to things I'd never even heard of. Then they ramped up. Sephora, Nordstrom, some obscure wellness retreat, booking for $2,800 in upstate New York. I remember asking her about that trip. She told me it was for work burnout, that she needed space, time to reflect. I believed her, like a fool. Then came the real dagger. December 12th, $3,750. Home decor, Fairview Heights, Illinois. Same suburb. Same zip code as the receipt from the jacket. Same timeline as when I thought she was at her sister's helping her with wedding prep. No refund. No returns. Paid in full from our joint checking. I stared at the line item until my eyes blurred. I tried to breathe, but every inhale tasted like betrayal. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the ease, the audacity, the sheer confidence she had that I would never look, that I would never question, that I would just keep refilling the tank while she drove our life off a cliff. I clicked View Statement and scrolled back further, months back. The story unfolded like chapters. Charges in hotels and cities she had no reason to be in. An Uber from O'Hare to a luxury condo building I'd never heard of. A duplicate Spotify account. A second Netflix profile named M. I had never seen that letter before in our lives. No family member. No friend. Just M. Sitting there, quietly, watching shows on a second account we paid for, using my name, my card, my trust. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't smash anything. That would have felt too cinematic, too generous. What I felt was worse than rage. I felt clarity. Cold, precise, surgical clarity. She hadn't just left me. She had replaced me while I was still standing in the room. She used my stability, my routines, my blind loyalty as a shield, a tool. I was her financial scaffolding while she built something shiny and new, just far enough away to stay out of sight. And for what? So she could call me safe, while texting someone else soon. I closed the laptop slowly, like I was sealing a crime scene. Then I walked into the kitchen, made myself a cup of black coffee, and stared out the window at the neighbor's flickering porch light. I wasn't thinking about revenge. Not yet. That would have been too reactive. Too easy. What I was thinking about was silence. The kind of silence that doesn't scream or shout. The kind that leaves questions instead of answers. And that's when the idea formed. I wouldn't confront her. I wouldn't even let her know I saw anything. I would become a ghost in the story she thought she controlled. And when she realized what I'd taken with me, well, that's when the silence would finally start screaming back. The morning air tasted metallic. That strange combination of cold and electricity, like something was about to happen, but hadn't yet. I stood in the kitchen, sipping my coffee, watching the steam rise as if it had somewhere better to be. She still hadn't come home. No texts. No missed calls. Just that single receipt from the picture I sent of the jacket. The silence was deliberate now. Not absence. Control. She was waiting for me to spiral. She wanted a confrontation. Something messy. Something she could point to later and say, see, this is why I left. But I wasn't giving her that. Not anymore. I had spent years being the predictable one. The man who stayed calm. Who reasoned. Who apologized first just to keep the peace. That version of me died somewhere between the folder named Done and the $3,750 home decor charge. I didn't pack a suitcase. I didn't write a note. I didn't even take my toothbrush. But I did take 3 things. The first was the fireproof safe from the top shelf of our closet, the one she forgot existed because she never needed it. Inside were our birth certificates, a copy of our marriage license, 2 USB drives, and a manila envelope with handwritten passwords I'd begged her to write down just in case something ever happened. She'd scoffed at the time, rolled her eyes, said I worried too much. She'd never once looked inside it. The second thing I took was the backup hard drive from my desk drawer. She always said it was clutter, called it my digital junk drawer. But that old drive contained every financial record from the past 7 years. Bank statements, tax returns, receipts, credit card reports, even voice memos I recorded when I noticed strange spending patterns. Not because I suspected her back then, just because I've always been the kind of guy who documents things no one else thinks are important. That habit used to annoy her. Now it felt like armor. And the third thing? I walked into the bedroom, picked up the Burberry coat, folded it gently, and slipped the Neiman Marcus receipt back into its pocket. Then I laid it on her side of the bed, reached into her top drawer, and took her wedding ring. Not mine. Hers. She'd stopped wearing it months ago. Said her fingers were swelling from stress. I nodded like an idiot, said something supportive, told her we'd get it resized. She left it behind on purpose. A symbol. A statement. But I took it anyway, not out of spite, but because I wanted her to notice it was gone. I wanted her to come home, look in that drawer, and feel the sudden absence. That tiny metal ring had been her way of pretending she was still thinking things through. A way to dodge questions, blur timelines, keep options open. I wasn't going to let her have that luxury. By 9:15 a.m., I was gone. Not just from the house, from the city. I used the backup debit card she never knew about to fill up my gas tank and paid cash for a burner phone at a gas station 30 miles out. No tracking, no shared accounts, no more data she could pull if things got messy. Because I knew they would. I didn't have a plan yet, not fully, just a direction. East. Away from the version of me she thought would crumble. I passed the Welcome to Fairview Heights sign around 10:07 a.m. and kept driving. Didn't even look toward the gated communities with their magazine-perfect houses and neatly trimmed hedges. I knew she was probably there right now, sipping coffee that someone else paid for, wrapped in a luxury robe she used my credit score to afford. But I wasn't heading toward her. I was heading toward someone else. Someone who had unknowingly helped me prepare for this exact moment. Someone she never knew I had kept in touch with. And when I showed him what I found in that manila envelope, his face turned white. Because what she thought was just a clean break was about to become something far messier. And for the first time in years, I smiled. I hadn't spoken to Emmett Green in nearly 9 years, but I still had his number written on the back of a concert ticket I kept folded in my wallet. Not because we were close, we weren't. Not because I liked him, I didn't. But because of one thing he once told me, drunk and cornered in a kitchen at a mutual friend's engagement party, long before I ever married her. She ruins people, man. Beautifully. At the time, I thought he was being dramatic. Maybe even bitter. He had dated her in college, briefly, and from what I'd heard, it hadn't ended well. She never liked talking about him. Called him obsessed. Said he kept popping up when she made it clear she'd moved on. I believed her, of course. I believed everything she said back then. That was my role. After all, the believer. The steady one. The man who didn't ask too many questions. But now, with a burner phone buzzing softly in my hand and my car humming quietly on the side of a sleepy road east of Fairview Heights, I stared at that faded ticket stub and wondered, what if Emmett had been the only honest one? It took me 3 tries before he answered. His voice was scratchy, cautious, like he expected it to be a scam. Emmett. It's Clay. Silence. Then, holy sh*t. I thought you were dead or something. I wasn't sure what to say. Can we talk? An hour later, we met in a diner off Route 52 that smelled like burned bacon and desperation. He hadn't changed much, still wore beat-up boots, still had that tired look in his eyes like he hadn't slept properly since 2010. When I slid into the booth across from him, he stared at me for a solid minute before speaking. She finally do it to you too? I didn't answer. Just pulled the manila envelope out of my bag and slid it across the table. He opened it, looked through the documents. Bank statements. A printed version of the Neiman Marcus receipt. Photos of the coat. A copy of the fake billing address she used. A screenshot of the Netflix profile marked M. His eyes locked on the last one. Matthew, he said, voice low. She used to call me that. Not Emmett. Matthew was the name I gave her when we were, seeing each other. I blinked. Wait, what? He gave a bitter laugh. She didn't like saying my real name. Said it sounded too dusty. So she gave me a new one. Told me I looked like a Matthew. I thought it was cute. Then I found out she called the guy after me the same thing. I stared at him, stunned. She recycles names, he said, shaking his head. She recycles lives. Then, without me even asking, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. This is gonna sound insane, he said. But after she ended things with me, I started writing it all down. Every weird thing. Every lie. Every excuse. Just so I'd know I wasn't crazy. I flipped through the pages. And what I found there, it wasn't just about her. It was about others. Names. Places. Patterns. The same phrases repeated. The same excuses reused. The same silence she left in her wake like smoke from a house fire she'd already walked away from. One page in particular stopped me cold. March 14th, 2019. A note about a retreat in upstate New York. Same spa name. Same $2,800 charge. Different man. Different year. I thought I was helping her heal, Emmett whispered. But she was just upgrading. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt something shift inside me. A crack in the weight pressing against my ribs. Because now I wasn't alone in this madness. I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't the first. But I would be the last. And I'd make sure of it. Emmett looked at me across the booth. You want to burn it all down, don't you? No, I said quietly, folding the papers back into the envelope. I want her to watch it collapse. The week that followed wasn't about planning revenge. It was about creating exposure. You see, I didn't want to confront her and scream and sob and demand answers. That would only feed her narrative. The emotional man she'd probably already painted to friends, to lawyers, maybe even to the new man whose coat still haunted my memory. Instead, I made myself invisible. Not gone, just everywhere she didn't expect me to be. It started with the email. I created a new address, one she wouldn't recognize. Then I sent a message to her personal inbox with no subject line and no signature. Just a Dropbox link. Inside it, scanned copies of the manila envelope, the statements, the receipts, the image of her wedding ring in my palm, the side-by-side screenshots of two nearly identical Netflix profiles both named M, years apart. No explanation. No accusations. Just evidence. Quiet, clinical, surgical. She opened it. I know because I had the link tracked. She clicked through the files over the course of 23 minutes. Then she went silent again. That silence didn't scare me anymore. It told me everything I needed to know. The next day, I made a call. Not to her. Not to the man. I still didn't know who he was, and I didn't care. No, I called someone else entirely. Her boss. Well, technically, our former boss. Before she quit last year to focus on herself, we had both worked for a small, family-run marketing agency. I'd left a few months before she did, after getting a remote offer that finally paid what I was worth. But I still had her old work contacts, and one of them, Jules, had always liked me more than her. Said I was the grounded one. So I called Jules and asked her to lunch. I didn't even need to explain much. I showed her the screenshots, and Jules's face paled. You know she still uses the agency name, right? She said. She tells clients she consults for us. Says she has access to our analytics tools. She didn't. She hadn't for nearly 8 months. But that didn't stop her from building a personal brand based on association. Her LinkedIn profile, her portfolio, even the client logos on her website, all lifted from campaigns she barely touched. I would know. I wrote the back-end copy for half of them. We spent 2 hours mapping out everything. By the end, Jules looked like someone had just woken her from a long nap into a nightmare. Clay, are you trying to sue her? I shook my head. No. I just want her life to stop moving on as if nothing ever happened. And that's when the idea hit us. Not a lawsuit. Not even a public takedown. Something quieter. More surgical. A call. To the biggest potential client on her portfolio. A green tech company out of Denver with a reputation for transparency and ethics. I didn't say anything cruel. I just emailed them a polite note from an anonymous sender suggesting they verify her credentials before signing anything. I included a single line. She sells trust she doesn't own. Less than 24 hours later, she deleted her LinkedIn account. No warning. No name change. Just gone. 3 days later, her website went dark. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. A knock on my motel room door. I opened it expecting Emmett or maybe room service. Instead, she stood there. Same coat, same face, but everything in her eyes was different. Not anger. Not fear. Confusion. Like she couldn't quite figure out which string she pulled that unraveled everything. Clay, what are you doing? I didn't say anything at first. Just stepped aside and let her walk in. She looked around like the room was something foul, a place below her standards. But I could tell she knew. Deep down, she knew the collapse had started, and she had no idea how to stop it. You could have just talked to me, she said quietly, voice trembling like she wanted to seem fragile again. We could have worked through this. I turned, met her eyes, and for the first time in years, I didn't look away. You said you were done, I said. I'm just finishing the sentence. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Because when you burn down a house, you don't get to act shocked when the smoke reaches the neighbors. And in that moment, in that silent, sterile motel room, she realized this wasn't just about us anymore. It never was. She didn't cry. That's the part that stuck with me most. She just stood there, arms crossed, shoulders tight, staring at the motel wallpaper like it offended her. As if this cheap, in-between place, was beneath her. Not what I had found. Not what she had done. Not the collapse of the little empire she built on borrowed trust and my blind affection. Her ego was the only thing grieving. She gave me a dozen half-excuses, all wrapped in that performative regret people use when they're not sorry, just scared. I didn't mean for it to go that far. You weren't really present the last year. It got complicated. I thought you'd moved on too. The usual script. I let her speak. I didn't interrupt. That was my gift to her, space to hear herself out loud. When she finally ran out of air, she looked at me like she expected me to say something kind, something forgivable, something that would let her feel a little less like the villain. But I just nodded and said, okay, that was it. Not because I had nothing to say, but because the version of me she expected, the soft one, the fixer, the man who begged and rationalized and offered one more chance. He didn't live here anymore. She left quietly after that. No hug, no goodbye, just a door clicking shut. I sat there for a while, staring at the wall. It was over, not just the marriage, not just the lies, but the weight. The constant pressure to keep something alive that had been dying for a long time before she ever said, I'm done. That was 3 months ago. Today, I live in a small town 2 states away. I rent the upper floor of a craftsman house with creaky floors and terrible water pressure. I make just enough from freelance copywriting and some consulting work to keep my fridge full, the heat on, and my weekends mine. And I've never felt freer. I see Emmett once in a while. We don't talk about her anymore. We've both buried that chapter. Sometimes we sit in silence on his porch, watching the wind move through the trees, letting the past stay where it belongs. I started gardening, too. Built a raised bed with my own hands. Not for lemons, just herbs, tomatoes, some lavender. Simple things that grow with a little patience, a little sunlight, and a little care. No secrets, no lies, just dirt and water and quiet effort. I don't check her social media. I don't Google her. I don't wonder where she is or who she's with. Because the best closure isn't hearing, I'm sorry. It's realizing you don't need it. She said she was done, and so was I. But here's the difference. She walked away from a life she wanted to escape. I walked toward a life I finally got to choose. And that made all the difference.